I started a drone business 1 year ago. In this video, I'm going over 5 mistakes that I made on my first drone shoot. Hopefully, you'll be able to avoid these mistakes and hit the ground running. Starting off, the first tip that I have for today is to communicate with your client. And over communication is your friend. I learned this the hard way on my first drone shoot. I thought I was super prepared. I had all my gear ready, my batteries charged, my SD cards. But the second I stepped out of my car, I had already made a mistake. You see, when I got out of the car, I was feeling a little awkward, so I decided to find a little space alone by myself and take my drone up in the air. This was already a huge mistake. Not only did I waste half a battery, which more on that later, but I also didn't touch base with my client. See, the first thing you do when you get to a drone shoot should be to touch base with your client. Not only to let them know that you're there and that you're about to take your drone up, but this is a great opportunity for you to touch base and ask them what the goals of their video are. What kind of footage do they want you to be capturing? And also, do they have an itinerary of the event? This is all great information for you to have, especially if you're beginning your drone journey. So, since I waited to touch base with my client, not only did I drain half of my battery, but my client also thought I was late. That just kind of put us off to a rocky start. Since this happened at my first drone shoot, I've made it a big priority to make sure that I'm communicating with all my clients ahead of time. Before shoot, I have a discussion with my clients to give clear expectations for the day, right? Not only do they know what the results they're going to get are, but they know the time I'm going to arrive, what my action plan is, and kind of my thoughts on the situation as a whole. If I can, I also try and have that conversation either in person or on the phone. I think that this really just kind of helps build some trust between you and your client before you just kind of show up to a shoot. You don't want to be showing up as a stranger, you want to be showing up as the drone pilot. This just helps your clients know, hey, there's a real person on the other side of this phone. Then, the second that I get to a drone shoot, I'm trying to touch base with my client and just let them know I'm there. This seems kind of obvious and kind of simple, but you'd be surprised. And even when I'm not on a drone shoot with a client, I like to try and keep that clear communication up, right? I'll actually reach out to my clients every couple of weeks just to touch base, see how they're doing, and see if they have any projects for me. I've actually been able to get a lot of extra work through just touching base with my clients. Another thing with communication is that if it's your first drone shoot, you want to try and be clear and upfront with your client from the beginning. Most clients really appreciate the honesty, and a lot of clients will understand if they know that you're still gaining experience. That first drone shoot also taught me something else. You should never be doing something for the first time if you're doing a drone shoot for a client. That brings us on to tip number 2, which is to practice beforehand. You should not be doing anything new on a drone shoot. When you're working with a client, this isn't the time to try new things that could mess with your footage. Again, I learned this the hard way. Early on, I had a client ask if I could fly at night. Well, legally the answer was yes. So I, of course, said yes to the drone shoot. The issue was I had never flown at night. Instead of going out the night before and practicing, I decided I could figure it out at the drone shoot. This was a big mistake. Not only was I using my anti-collision lights for the first time, but I also didn't have the right settings. Because this was my first time flying at night, I didn't know the proper settings to use for the drone. So all my footage was just absolute dog shit. A lot of the lights were overexposed, it was super noisy, it was blurry, nothing looked right. When I reviewed the footage, I literally cringed. I knew that I was going to have a difficult conversation with my client that, hey, I know I just did a shoot for you, but unfortunately, none of the footage turned out good, so I wasn't able to actually do anything with it. My client understood, but still, that's not the kind of experience that I want my clients to have with me, and not what I want to be doing on my drone shoots. Even to this day, I still try and do practice city reels or other drone shoots on my own for personal projects, just so I can learn these new techniques and make sure that I'm prepared for any drone shoot. The third tip that I have for you is to make sure that you're trying to capture more footage than you think that you need. Another mistake that I made on my first drone shoot. I focused too much on capturing the perfect shots and not enough on capturing enough shots, right? At the time of this first drone shoot, I only had around an hour and a half of fly time. Remember that half battery that I burned at the beginning? Well, that cut down my fly time even more, which meant that every moment in the air mattered. I didn't know this at the time, so I spent too long actually setting the shots up, making sure they look nice, and I didn't capture nearly enough footage. To make things worse, since this was kind of my first drone shoot, I was also trying to play with some of my settings too much, and I actually messed up some of my footage. By the time I landed, I knew that I hadn't captured all the footage that I needed to have taken. Now, when I'm at a drone shoot, I actually take a little bit different of an approach to recording footage. Usually, I keep my drone on the ground for as long as possible. I try and visualize the shot in the air, what I'm going to capture beforehand, and then I send my drone up and I capture the shot. I might come up with 2, 3, or 4 shots at a time, but then I'll bring my drone down so I can save my battery. I also got 2 additional batteries to make sure that I have plenty of fly time for any event. This just helps me make sure that I have enough footage for my entire video for anything that I need. I'll also take a second at a drone shoot, go back and just review some of the footage that I take. I just want to make sure that my settings are looking good and that everything is looking right. Also, as a beginner, don't be afraid to use the automatic mode for your settings. In some YouTube videos, I heard oh, you're not a real drone pilot if you don't actually use the pro settings. But don't worry about this, especially early on when you're flying for people. Just make sure that you're capturing quality footage. You'll learn about all the settings as you go. The 4th mistake that I made on my first drone shoot was that I wasn't subscribed to this YouTube channel. The 4th tip that I have for you is to be prepared for anything. Remember that first shoot when I burned half the battery? Well, that came back to haunt me. By the end of the event, I had completely ran out of batteries. This meant that I missed potential shots that I might have been able to capture to help round out my video. So now I really just try and make sure that I'm as prepared as possible before my drone shoot. I check the airspace and weather beforehand before I get there. I make sure to bring all my gear, as many batteries as I can, any extra things that I can have, make sure that I have a high vis jacket, all my ND filters, just in case. Remember, you want to be prepared for anything. When possible, I also try and scout the location ahead of time. I either do this online on Google Maps just so I can get a lay of the land, or actually while I'm on site, I'll take a walk around the venue, around the event, so just to make sure that I know where any hazards are, and so I know where I'm going to be flying. I also try and plan out my batteries throughout the event. I know, hey, if I need to capture some wide shots, some mid shots, and some close-up shots, I'm going to use 1 battery for wide shots and capture a whole bunch at the beginning. I'm going to use one battery for mid-angle shots, and I'm going to capture that kind of in the middle, and I'm going to use my last battery for close-up shots, So I'm planning out my batteries and trying to give a general understanding of my flight. And finally, when it comes to preparation, you want to make sure that you just have an emergency plan set out in case anything happens. You can't predict everything, but having just a general backup plan can help in case of an emergency. And finally, the last tip that I have for you, if you're going through all the work of doing a drone shoot, editing a video for someone, especially if it's going to be free, make sure that you get a Google review afterwards. This is something that I didn't do enough early on, but just the more Google reviews that you're able to collect, the more trust that you're able to build with your future clients. I've found that my clients are actually really happy and eager to give me a Google review if I just ask, especially if I ask beforehand. If I just say something in an email like, hey, if you really like my work, I would really appreciate a Google review at the end of this. And then what you want to do is make it as easy as possible for them to complete it. You want to already have your page complete, and you just want to send them a direct link to the review that they have to fill out. I literally don't think I've had one client not complete the review when I've asked for it. It's not about getting one Google review. It's about consistently getting that feedback and building your credibility as a business owner. If you've enjoyed this video, you might like to check out this one up here. Goodbye.